Greetings and good vibes, everyone. Welcome back to the Leon Block. I'm your guide, John Tell. Tonight, I am, or today, wherever you are, however you are listening, I am joined by a co host tonight, Meg Keller. You know her, she's a friend to the show. If you have not, I will introduce you to Meg. And we also have a guest tonight. Andrea Maldonado, who is the wife of Miguel Maldonado, who was a victim of police brutality, suffering from a mental health crisis, and was executed by the police when he really just needed proper services, care, attention, and help. So tonight, we are looking to shed some light on mental health issues, but also talk about what happened and why it's important to talk about it. Everyone's story deserves to be heard, and this particular story just tugs at my heart. It happened on my birthday at that. So for me, the fact that it happens in the winter, the fact that there was a 2 year old involved, it's a tragic story, but at the same time, it's something that we need to hear. I think at the very least to take heed. Um, I'm joined again by Meg Keller. Meg, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
I'm excited to have you as a co-host tonight. Really
Thank
excited.
you. Always a pleasure.
And Andrea, thank you for blessing us with your presence and allowing us to be able to interview you tonight. It's really appreciated.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. So, I guess I'm just gonna go right ahead into it. All right. So this happened on January 16th, right? And so, your husband was going through mental health crisis, and let me get this right. Y'all went to the hospital, and
hmm
y'all were there for so long. Y'all decided to leave after waiting for, was it an MRI?
No, so we ended up at the hospital because he was having a little bit of pain. But while there, he was really like, he just wasn't himself, pacing back and forth in and out of the hospital. He was outside, inside, smoking a bunch of cigarettes. Like he was just, you could tell he was kind of on edge a little bit. We were just literally waiting for a doctor to read his blood work and look at his EKG, and no one even bothered to sit down with him for 5 minutes in the 5 hours we were there.
Wow. And you know what? That's typical. I think
Right.
at least for central Pennsylvania, let me paint the scene real quick. Andrea, you are from central Pennsylvania. This
Yeah.
took in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, I've lived all across Pennsylvania. One thing I can note
Right.
is that trying to get help, whether it's a really bad fall or whether it's a mental health issue, is hard to come by, especially going to like an ER in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Right? So this is something that's very common, and when it comes to mental health issues, it's very hard to find the right services in Pennsylvania alone. I don't know about the rest of the country, but here it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So after being there for 5 hours and seeing him like pacing back and forth,
hmm
he decided to just leave, right? Like I'm guessing y'all got fed up and we're just tired of waiting. You wanted to go home because
Yeah.
you have a 2 year old daughter, right?
Right. And she was with us. So we got in the car. We sat in the parking lot for a good like half hour. I was charging my phone, trying to get him to go back in. I'm like, just wait it out. Just wait it out. And about half hour, 40 minutes went by. And he's like, nope, not. He's like, we're just going home. So I said, okay, well, let's just go home. We'll get some sleep. We'll figure out something to do in the morning, kind of thing. And then we left. We headed for the house.
And so as you left for the house, what transpired then?
So he drove around a little bit. Like I said, he wasn't himself. So we were staying with my parents, and which we'd been staying at my parents for a while, and it wasn't any different than any other night. However, I knew he was off a little bit because he's like, I need to find somewhere else to stay. I don't want to go back to your parents, blah, blah. And I was just trying to convince him, look, dude, just go back there. We'll figure out things in the morning. Like, you're not feeling it. We've been at the hospital, like just trying to talk him, just trying to tell him, like, let's just go home, get some sleep, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we drove around, went down Cameron Street, back around, Front Street, came up, circled around, and we went up Paxton Street, and we turned onto 19th Street. And at that point, it was like the flip of a switch. All of a sudden, he pulls out a knife as he does a big U-turn, pulls out a knife, and then starts stabbing me. He ended up stabbing me 13 times while he was driving. And I didn't even know he had a knife at the time. I didn't know what was going on at the time. I just knew that I was trying to defend myself from him. And he had whipped the car. He like sped up really fast. Then he slammed on the brakes and turned right onto Paxton Street. And at that point, he had let go of the wheel and had crashed into a light pole on Paxton Street. I had gotten out of the car at that point. That's when I realized that he was stabbing me. He also had bit me at one point. Like, there was just not like him. Like, he had never, in the 15 years that we had been together, he had never lifted a hand to me. So it was just really like everything. I was just so confused. I didn't know what was going on. So my first instinct was, I need to get the baby out of the car. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's not himself, Right. So I open my car door. I get out. I go to the back. I unstrap the baby, grab the baby. He grabbed a hold of the baby's leg. And as I was getting her out, he was backing the car out. So he wouldn't let her go. So I'm like, well, I'm not going anywhere because she's not going anywhere. So we're going to ride this out together. So I tried to call 911, ended up dropping the phone. He took the phone one time. So there were a couple of failed calls to 911. We drove down Paxton Street, headed toward the river. We went down Paxton Street, down the river. And so we went down the street, down towards the river. And we went to, we ended up, he said, I'm just going to pull into the river to go. We went into, we pulled up to the river, and he's like, let me just say goodbye to the baby. I know I'm going to get in trouble for, for shit that's going on. Like, they're up there. Can you just let me say goodbye to the baby? Because I know I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be in trouble for doing, what I did. Because that time he had like come in and out of it throughout this whole time. And so it was wasn't a whole long time between there. And we left the hospital at like 12:40. We ended up in the water at 1:30. So anyway, we're driving down Paxton Street. He went down a one-way, went past the hotel, drove around, and we ended up down at the Dock Street Dam. So he pulls there and he's parked for a minute. I grabbed my phone, started to call 911, and at that point, I don't know if that's what set him off or what, but he gunned it and he went down the like walkway and into the river. Well, right into the river. He drove us right into the river. At that point, we were still on the phone with 911, but I had lost my glasses. I had lost my phone. I had dropped my phone on the floor. I had dropped my glasses on the floor, and I was still holding the baby out of the car seat when we went into the water. Yeah. So yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 911, you called 911 then, right?
Right.
Even if you didn't speak to anyone, you called 911. And as far as I know,
correct.
Protocol for 911 is even if, because of circumstances and things can happen and people can't speak sometimes, they're supposed to come in some way and check things out. I'm guessing that was not the case. From what I recall, is like the police showed up other being prompted by other circumstances, like someone else seeing y'all in the river, correct?
Yeah, so they did not come to us because of the 911 call. So, which is kind of jacked up, because if you listen to the 911 call, the first thing that I say is, oh my God, we're in the fucking river, is the first words that I can hear myself say in the call. So it's just one of those things, like if they would have played it back, somebody would have heard something, but I don't know what that was. I don't know why anybody didn't play it back. I don't know what that process was. Nobody's given me any confirmation on that. So I don't really know. But we were in the water. We went in the water about 1:35. We crawled out through the sunroof. I had the baby in my hand. I tried to shimmy down down the windshield, across the hood of the car, because I was going to jump out into the water and try to get across with me and the baby to get away from Miguel, because I didn't know what kind of state he was going to be in, because I could tell he was having a psychotic break and his mental status was not good, because he was literally thought I was somebody else. He thought that I was somebody trying to hurt the baby and his wife, and he thought that was that he, you know what I mean? He thought I was somebody else.
Yeah.
So, so that's, so I ended up not getting across the water, obviously, because the water was way too fast, way too cold, never would have been able to. We luckily were able to get stuck on the big boulders at the dam there, so the car didn't float the rest of the way down the river. So, so that was like a godsend. But we sat on the top of the car. I was sitting with my back towards, facing, my back was toward the windshield and my butt was on the top of the car. My legs were inside the sunroof and Miguel was on the other side of the sunroof and the baby was on my chest. So from the baby to Miguel's side was probably, I don't know, 6 inches maybe. So, and he was kneeling on his knees the whole time. And that's where we sat that whole entire 2 hours that we were on that water. The only thing that brought the cops to where we were was 2 guys showed up to the Dock Street Dam to check the something or other, the machines or something. It was like 3:30 in the morning, 2:25 or 3:25, 3:30 in the morning. They actually showed up to check something and we were out there and they saw us. They heard us yelling and saw us because immediately when I saw them, I started yelling. And that's what prompted the police to come see us. Nothing else. They didn't ping our phone. They didn't, nothing. We were out there for 2 hours. It was -9 degrees that night.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And we were all of us were wet from being, from the water coming into the car. We had no cell phone. I had nothing. I mean, there was nothing. I was in a lightweight jacket and a tank top underneath because my jacket was in the car. The baby had a lightweight jacket on and a t-shirt because you don't put a winter jacket on a baby when they're in the car, in a car seat. Right. He had a jacket on, but, there wasn't any good circumstances whatsoever. I mean, that's point blank, but he was definitely having a mental health crisis for sure.
What do you think? What do you feel and know the authorities, the supposed authorities, did wrong and what they should have done differently to ensure that Miguel would still be here today?
So I don't. Okay, so you ask that question to every person, and everyone's going to give you a different answer. Yeah. Obviously, my answer is going to be different because I was involved in it. Do I think that the cops say one of the things the cop said is he moved aggressively. He moved the knife aggressively towards the baby and I. No, he didn't. He was adjusting himself because his pants were wet. He was wet. He was starting to slip and he was catching himself, trying to adjust himself. He was no way, shape, or form had the knife to the baby's back. Like they said, no way, shape, or form did he have a knife to me at any point. After he had stabbed me in the car, he never stabbed me or hurt me after we were in the river at all. Never. Never once. So there was never any of that other one. So other than that, they took 4 to 6 minutes to try to talk him down, which they didn't do. They said that at that point, the point that they shot him was they had to save life they had to basically kill him to save me and the baby. And in part of me, they didn't know the whole extent of the circumstances. From the information they had, that's what they're using as basically justifying this bullshit. And I don't know that they didn't call in a crisis team. They didn't try to talk him down. They're like, oh, just drop the knife. They didn't try to get to the bottom of it. He wasn't aggressively like holding me hostage. He wasn't holding the baby hostage. None of that stuff. But nobody tried to all they said to him was put the knife down. And he kept saying, shoot me, just shoot me. I can't live with what I've done to my family. And at that point, you could tell he was remorseful. He was sorry for what he had done, that kind of thing. So he wasn't, I don't believe he was any longer a threat. No, take this out there. So I don't think at any point he was a threat. So that's kind of where I just don't know. You know what I mean? I don't think that, they're trying to use what they can to justify what they did. And there's nothing that can justify it because there's no way that in 4 minutes you can tell me you can make a wise decision to shoot a grown man 6 inches from the back of his 2-year-old daughter's back. without saying, hey, Andrea, get down in the sunroom. Had I thought that I was in any danger or that he would have hurt me, he had 2 hours to kill me or kill my daughter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if he really wanted us hurt, it doesn't make sense. Their whole thing doesn't make any sense. And they're going by what they learned after the fact. They didn't know at that point that I was stabbed. They didn't know I was even hurt. They didn't know anything. They had none of that information until after the fact. And that's what they've used. They have used details of the case after the fact to justify the shooting. And that's fucked up.
100%.
You know what I mean? So do I think that it would have done any other way? I don't know that it would have ended any other way, because I think truthfully, Miguel would have never been able to live with what he did. And ultimately, I think he would have probably taken his own life. But that's not for me to say. I don't know. That's between him and God. I don't know what would have happened, but I pleaded with him to put the knife down, to stop. You know what I mean? But we had conversations before the police got there. He's like, you know how this is going to turn out, right? And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to do this. You know what I mean? So there was talk of it, but it wasn't anybody else's decision but his own to make that. If he wanted to do it to himself, that's one thing. But for somebody not to leave that decision up to him and decide it for him, that ultimately is really kind of fucked up.
100%.
So I mean, you know, and ultimately I've lost a husband, and my daughter has lost a dad. His mom has lost a son. His sister's lost a brother. I mean, we've all lost a huge piece of us. And it all comes down to the way it was handled from the get-go. We went into that ER at 7 p.m. And wow. It was 8.5 hours later when they shot him. In 8.5 hours, you're telling me that some motherfucker couldn't decide that they could try to do something?
Right.
And ultimately, your decision, we went in this mess. We started this mess in 8 hours. I was dealing with it for 8 hours. Miguel was dealing with his demons for 8 hours. And in 5 minutes, you decided that that's the best case scenario. This is all we can come up with, is we're just going to take him out.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
To shed light, Miguel was dealing with these demons his whole life.
Always. Yeah. He's okay. So his dad committed suicide when he was 15. So he's really fought with that. He's fought with addiction. He has tried to self-medicate, you know, so he did have some addiction issues. So that's all been a part of his mental health. But anytime you see mental health, 90% of the time you have addiction is a big part of it, or other things are a big part of it. He didn't like how the medicines made him feel. He didn't, you know, so he fought with that his whole life, and his demons won that night. I mean, with the help of the police. It wasn't, you know, it should have been his decision whether he wanted to be alive or dead. And that decision was ultimately taken from him.
I
you know,
hear from his sister saying that,
saying
my brother has been made to look like a monster, but he's a mentally ill man that needed help. Had he been seen at the hospital, we may have had a better outcome. Absolutely.
And I truly, truly believe that. I do. I honestly had somebody, after I begged and pleaded with, I went up to them multiple times that night at the ER, and I'm like, something is not right. Somebody just take 5 minutes of your time. Just have a doctor take 5 minutes and talk to him, and you will realize his thoughts were jumbled. He wasn't making sense when he was talking, all that kind of stuff, you know? And everybody's like, oh, well, why'd you let him drive if you knew that? Because Miguel was the type, right? So Miguel was the type it calmed him to drive. And I knew that. So I knew there was no inclination that I was in anything. Huh?
I said, none of that even matters. Why would you ask someone a question like that when someone's clearly like that? Makes no sense to ask that kind of question.
Yeah.
Well, it's very like accusational and accusatory when no one that's like that situation should be hindered, like should be harassed by any kind of direct accusatory language like that. That's not how you handle situations. You should not be handling situations like that. That shows the lack of compassion and the lack of understanding and the lack of actual expertise that is
absolutely
our whole system, the whole healthcare system, right there.
Right, and it's blaming the victim. That's what it. We do that so much in society that it's ridiculous. That you don't blame a victim. You don't. say a girl deserved to be raped because she had a short skirt on. No, it's the man who decided to have horrible thoughts about that. That's it all wraps around that. And the way that society looks at shit is so jacked up now. And it's just like mental health. Mental health, you say mental health and people cringe and run from it. It is the biggest stigma in the whole entire world. And it's like, that's got to change. We got to see some change with this mental health. There has got to be more that we can do to help people like my husband get the help that he needs to live a life that he deserves to live. We can't just shut them off and hope for the best, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just that's my goal in any of this. Like literally my goal in all of this, if nothing else, it is just to see more emphasis put on mental health, because mental health is the root of everything. Drug addiction, it's mental health. It's school shootings. The mental health is the root of school shootings. Mental health is the root of suicides. Mental health is it's all the root of it. If you take care of the root problem and we start like treating it, we're going to see less of the other stuff, crime, anything. It's all related.
Yes.
And it's people just don't want to talk about it. It's horrible. People just don't want to talk about it.
100%. And Jontel, also to add, like all of these cases that I'm coming across, like with the police officer involved shootings, out of 5 families that I've spoke to date, every single one of them have had a mental health emergency in some way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And none of them had a crisis team called, especially ones in Lancaster that had a crisis team available at their fingertips.
Right.
Yep.
And they're actually, that whole situation, they just closed a hospital prior to this situation happening, and he was 7 blocks away from the hospital that they closed.
Wow.
Yep.
So we all have to be
it is sad.
together for sure.
Absolutely. And that's the only way things are going to get done is we have to make some waves. And the only way to do that is to start throwing this in everybody's face. Like, you know, and until that hits home, it's like, oh, well, I don't know what it feels like, because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what empathy is. They don't feel empathy, and you can't teach empathy.
Right. 100%.
But we got to start putting this right in somebody's face and be like, what if this was your family? What if you were on that car for 2 hours? What would you have done? You know what I mean? Because no one can fathom being in that type of situation. I still to this day can't wrap my head around the fact that all this happened. It still feels like I'm reading somebody else's story and watching somebody else's movie.
Right.
You know, so I can't imagine what that's like for somebody else to try to put themselves in my shoes. But I don't even want that. I just want people to realize that we need to come together and start putting our heads together and start taking care of each other.
100%.
So, but yeah.
No, you got some speaking some powerful words there, Mama, because it's important. And you're not only a strong person now, but you were definitely a strong person that night. Like when you go through a traumatic situation or you're under stress, your mind and your body, like I feel like they kind of separate. And so everything can happen so quick, and we may get superhuman strength, or we may be really quick in our thinking and movements about, and you look back at it later and you're like, how the hell did I accomplish that? How did I do that? Well, you were faced with things that were, your life was in danger. And that was, in my opinion, that was no fault of anyone's. I'm not blaming the system on that either, but I do say that those are the circumstances under with which our system operates, and that we are forced to operate within, you know?
Absolutely. And
so the way that the decline of his mental health, especially at that moment, was under scrutiny. The police should not have been there, first of all. And you know, even though I get how they were called, like it wasn't like you called and said mental health, please, you know. So I get that. However, under the pretense of what was going on, and they didn't know what was going on, how y'all ended up in the river, why the hell did they shoot him? Like it just, you know. So this is really speaking also not only to the lack of mental health services that are provided, but also the trigger happy slave catcher mentality of what we call the
Yep.
police in the United States of
Right.
America.
100%.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because, and I will tell you this, don't get me wrong, I'm not against the police in any sense. There are a lot of good police officers out there, but there are a few bad apples that are out there to prove this is a power trip for me and I will go hell or high water because I'm better than you. That kind of mentality. You can't be a police officer and have that mentality.
Right.
And there are too many out there that believe like that. And unfortunately, that's when situations like this happen.
Right. It's the bad apples. It's not like the whole
Right.
department is bad.
Nope.
It's just like
Nope.
strawberries or with fruit. If you
Right.
let them in the refrigerator,
Yep.
they will mold and then they can turn the
Yep.
whole thing moldy. Like,
Yep. Absolutely.
and we're not really questioning also, like for the audience, just so they have an idea. No one
Yeah.
is questioning if he was right by having a knife. What we're
Right.
questioning is the written policies, protocols, and procedures
Yes.
of de-escalation within the police department. We're asking for accountability, like transparency.
Correct.
These families are not offered any kind of support.
None.
Again, none, zero. I've talked to 5 families, none of them, whether it be an incarcerated death or a police shooting death, none of them are offered support after the fact.
And I can put it to you this way too. I get it. With the pandemic, everything's tightened up. There are a lot of people that are swamped. The therapists are swamped. But I will. This is what puts it into perspective right here. I have looked high and low for a trauma therapist for me and my daughter after this incident. My first session was just Tuesday.
Wow. So for 7, 8 months.
Yes, I've had to deal with it on my own because, luckily I have a great support system. My family flew in from every state to support me. I have Miguel's family. Everyone has been very supportive in that sense, and thank God for that. But that shouldn't happen because there are people and families out there that don't have families to have support, and there should be things set up for support because what is to say, like, if I had no one, what's to say I wouldn't have been in a mental health crisis? Do you see what I'm saying? So it's just a vicious circle, and we're not doing anything to try to stop that circle.
Right.
They're just adding to it and keeping them wheels spinning. At whose expense?
Ours.
Natural selection, is that what they're saying? Oh, this is natural selection. They'll just, no, fuck that. That's not how it should be. We need to have empathy for each other. We need to take care of each other. What happened to taking care of our neighbors and shit? Like, that's just, all that shit's out the window. And that one thing that's huge is, Meg's right, there's no support for these families. There's not even a damn support group for grieving families. Take this police out of it. There's not even a support group. Yes, there's places like the Caring Place and stuff, but for people who've lost their loved ones in traumatic instances, there is nothing. People don't want to touch it.
100%.
I can't handle that. I don't want to touch it. Liability. Oh, liability. But fuck liability.
Yes.
When are you gonna put that shit on the back burner? We need to start holding people accountable and say, what would you do if it was your family? Are you going to let them sit for 8 months, dwelling in their depression? Right. Like, I don't, it doesn't make sense. It's the liability, this liability, that. I get it. I understand the laws, and I do. I have a master's and I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I get it. I'm well educated. I know that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, you still have a heart. Everyone has a fucking heart. And nowadays, nobody gives a fuck about anybody else.
Right. Love grows love. If people would just understand that.
And hate hate infestors hate.
100%.
And hate will spread like a wildfire quicker than love will spread anything. Yep. And that's unfortunate.
Right.
But that's what it's become.
Right.
And it's sad. Yep.
It is definitely sad, but we take power in knowing that we all have each other and knowing
absolutely
that we can use, our resources. Right. Power of numbers. Yes.
Power in the people have power.
Yep. And it starts with a few. And I'm telling you, you got to start, and it's got to be one person to step up. And I said to and I'm talking to Meg through this, Jontel, it's really been an eye-opening experience for me. And I've learned that so many people have come up to me and said, I look up to you, like the strength that you showed. I don't see myself as that. You know what I mean? But what I do see is an opportunity for me to open doors for people that need to be opened, and using what I can use to help people. And that's what I plan to do.
Right.
So
and use that. You got to turn your pain into power. That's what we talked about in the beginning.
Absolutely.
And Jontel, actually, Andrea has taken the lead with this situation only happening in January. We've made a Facebook support group now in honor of these families, so they have some type of support and listening ear. But all of my families, Andrea will make contact with them and talk to them and just listen to them, because she knows firsthand like what it feels like to be suppressed and silenced.
Yeah.
And so like I've told her from the gate, like she's the baddest bitch like I've met. Like mad props. It's amazing. Because I don't know how I would, react. We never know until we're in that situation.
Do you have links to that group by any chance?
I do. Hold on just a second. I can send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've reached out to quite a few families yet. I want to make connections with them before we actually meet in a group, because it's one thing to be in a group and be able to express yourself. It's another thing to have somebody who actually cares and listens.
Right.
And
so
sometimes just having somebody who will listen is a huge thing.
So how can people contact you, Andrea, so they can, if they are going through something similar, or if they lost someone from mental health issues, can they contact you? Is there any way that they can contact you to speak?
Absolutely. So through Meg will share the Facebook page. I'll be admin on that Facebook page. They can contact through there. Jontel, I'll give you my contact information if they want to. My phone is open any hour of the night. I don't care. It is open for anybody and everybody. It does not matter. I know what it's like not to have anybody, and I know what it's like to have a good support system. So I've been on both sides of the fence. So I will give you my email address. I will give you my phone number, whatever contact information you need, you can put right on your website. They can go right to your website. I'll leave that information with you. You can put it out wherever you need to. And anyone who needs to contact me, feel free to reach out. I don't want anybody to think that they're like inhibiting me or that they're adding stress to my life or anything like that. Don't take it like that. If you need an ear to listen to, I'm here.
You heard it. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to show y'all real quick the Facebook page. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
It's called PA Families of Deadly Force, honoring who we remember to them to be, not how the media portrayed them to be.
Yep.
Which is very important. Something we really need to keep mind of. It's Uniting PA Families of Deadly Force, a safe space to connect with others who have been directly impacted by police officer-involved shootings or death while incarcerated. A place to connect, heal, listen, share stories of courage, survival for healing and growth.
Yep.
That is so important. That is so important.
Here's the other thing too, Jontel. I do want to put this out there too. There are certain situations, the media has portrayed my situation to be a domestic violence situation. In no way, shape, or form. I will reiterate that until the day I die. My husband never raised a hand to me. In the 15 years we were married, in no way, shape, or form was there a domestic violence situation. They made him out to be a monster that he was not. And there are a lot of cases that I've come across with Meg, that Meg has shared with me, that they do the same exact thing. They flip the script to make themselves look like they're doing what they need to do. And in all righteousness, when you dig under that surface, you don't even have to dig. You scratch under that surface and you find out that's wrong. So it doesn't have to be deadly force. It can be, if there's somebody out there that needs help with resources for counseling or needs help with suicidal thoughts or any mental health things that they need, contact me. I have resources, I have names, I have that stuff. So I don't limit it just to police force, but I mean, that's our main cause, but I'm not going to limit it to that. I know that this will be a lot bigger than it is, but there's got to be some connection there to be able to at least, and I will be eventually putting on our website any resources for people who are in a mental health crisis or that kind of thing. But we are going to focus mainly on people who've lost a loved one to a mental health crisis by the hands of another, mostly the police.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I mean, yeah, so mental health is going to be my main focus along with all these other things like that. So
it's a revolution. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, coming.
I just first off want to commend you for being able to
know?
be forthright, outspoken, and very solid in your firm stance about where you sit on these issues.
Yeah.
But also, it hasn't been that long, so I just want to remind you it's okay to, and I'm sure now that you have the proper services as you should have been had from the start, that you remind yourself to put yourself first and have self-care.
Yeah.
Take care of you and your daughter, all of that, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't help anyone else.
Absolutely.
And I had to say that for myself to remember the validate yourself on. But
Yep.
other than that, I really commend you for being the person that you are. You are like Meg said, a bad bitch, but you definitely are a force to be reckoned with. And I just want you to keep that in mind, because as you know it, things will come, things will grow, so I just wanted to give a little bit of encouragement because that's just what I do.
I appreciate that.
No doubt. Because this situation is it's very, very common, and the news, the mainstream media news will make a spectacle out of it as if it's like one-off, and it's not. These are situations that are happening more and more, and it's justified because of the mainstream media's portrayment of these kind of events and these kind of issues that happen to people that are undergoing issues with mental health or illnesses. And myself included, I have mental health illnesses and issues, and it's not easy trying to stay on a low radar for different reasons, because I don't want to draw attention to myself for situations such as this, because you never know what could happen. No one, when you left that night to go to the hospital, you'd not expect to to come home without him,
Right. And nobody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody, but in order to have empathy and compassion for your neighbor and each other, we have to be a little vulnerable. So, that's one thing that I've learned through this is don't get me wrong, I have some really shitty days. There are some days I don't want to get up in the morning, but I can't do that. And I know that. So, but there are days like that. And I don't want to downplay that, because that's the real truth, So I get it. I get where these people are coming from. I do. I was firsthand knowledge of it, so I get it.
And that's the best type of, love and help, people that have been directly impacted themselves, that they can relate. That's the first step to healing, is being understood, accepted, acknowledged for where you're at.
Right.
And that's what Andrea brings to the table. I was so excited, and happy to meet her, because her story, has definitely, I feel like it makes me hug my babies a little bit tighter every night.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
For sure.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Andrea. We greatly
appreciate
it.
Thanks for letting me on your show. I mean, you don't get opportunities that have arisen just in the last few months. It's been amazing, and I honestly cannot wait to see where this shit takes off. Like I'm so excited to see where we go with it. Just to, there's got to be some change, and I'm so looking forward to it,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all very much for letting me, have a platform to speak and be able to supply what I need to,
Of
No,
course.
honestly, we're blessed to have your presence to be able to educate other people, and hopefully they can learn through your situation, or it resonates with them in something that they're going through with a family member of their own. Is there any like last things you want to let people know or say, or resources, or where they can find you, anything like that?
What'd you say? I think I lost it. It cut out for a minute.
I'm sorry. Are there any last things you want to say? Any last thoughts? How can people find you? Any resources you might have for folks, or even just encouragement?
I just honestly, anybody who's been in a traumatic situation, whether it's been at the hands of the police or anything, take it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, whatever you have to do to get through the day, do that. And like John Tell said, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you've got people that rely on you, you got to take care of yourself first. Make sure that always comes first, because if we don't nurture our own mental health, it's going to bleed. We're going to bleed on people who didn't cut us.
Right.
Oh,
yes, sister.
So
words, yes.
So yeah,
Meg,
but I do appreciate y'all. Thank you for letting me on the show.
Of course.
Oh, welcome.
All right.
Any last words before we get off air?
Yeah.
No, Meg, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I think that, all we can do is be observant, be loving to our neighbors, always have a listening ear, practice empathy. As much as we practice hate and judgment and all of that negative bull crap, practice empathy, practice love, make that an everyday habit.
Yes. And go buy my single, I Am Spirit, I Am Light, because it talks about all of those things. I am spirit, I am light. You can get it on SoundCloud. You can get it on Bandcamp, BANDCAMP, Bandcamp. Go grab my single. It's $2, and you could buy the album, which is $7. And it talks about issues such as taking care of yourself, self-care, how important it is to putting yourself first, and being mindful of everyone else, because we all are affected by the same things, right? We're all connected, and it's important that we be mindful of these things, not just walk on by. We see something on the news and we flip the channel. I get it. The mainstream media does not paint the picture that is actually there. But this is why we are here, because we want to provide you with the truth and the actual accounts and experiences from people such as Andrea. So again, Andrea, I thank you so much for coming on the show. Miguel is not here to tell his side of the story. However, I really commend you for doing what you can to shed light on his life. That is the most that is the best, the least that we can do, I would say.
Right.
So everyone,
Agreed.
Everyone, it has been a pleasure to bring this episode to y'all attention. Make sure that you meditate on your path, celebrate your being, liberate your spirit, and educate yourself. I'm John Tell, and we're joined by Meg and Andrea. Y'all have a good one.